Hello YouTube, this is Darcy from Mad About Orchids. Today I'm going to show you a border and I'll tell you about these plants, how I grow them culturally and what I've got them growing in. So first plant off is right up behind me, right there. Well, anyway, it's right behind me. That is Platycerium bifurcatum. It is known as the Australian elkhorn fern. It naturally occurs along the eastern coast of Australia, from Queensland to New South Wales to Victoria, all the way through to Tasmania and all the isles surrounding us on the eastern coast. It is an epiphytic fern, as you can see. I've got it grown on a hardwood mount with pure sphagnum moss and charcoal. This specimen here is about 40 years old. They are relatively slow-growing plants. They grow in deep shade on our rainforest trees where there's constant moisture and high humidity. These plants are reasonably cold hardy. As long as you don't get heavy severe frosts, you can grow them outside in the garden. And they are so, you could say, variable in ways you can grow them. You can grow them mounted, potted, or in hanging baskets. And you can grow them on live trees out in the garden. I found the best way to grow them is mounted. And yes, they are a moisture-loving fern, but they do not like having wet feet. I found growing it on the sphagnum moss on its mound, it helps me indicate when I need to water. That fern, I don't water that often because of the moisture it retains, and also we've got fairly high humidity here in our area. And in saying that, this plant is an exception to the rule when I say that they're relatively slow growing. This plant will produce maybe 6 or 7 new fronds a year for me. The growing season for it starts for me around spring, so late September, early October, or throw out a flush of new fronds. And then in sort of late summer, so February, March, or throw out a couple of new fronds. And now we're in April, mid-April, getting towards May, it's now throwing up another flush of new fronds. These plants will take some direct sunlight, but you want to grow them in a spot in your garden where it only gets the morning sun to about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And how I feed this plant is we put the old banana peels, used banana peels, in behind the mount. And in saying that, it doesn't do a lot really, but I found it works because it retains a bit more moisture for me as a mulch. This plant here I've got right next to me poking me in the glasses is Cymbidium Maybell. This is a variety that I've named. This one used to be my grandmother's plant. And in its parentage it has really far back Cymbidium suave and Medinum, the Australian native Cymbidium species. Now I've got one of those two species in the garden here, where I have suave in the collection. Alright, and so with Cymbidium suave, it is a very, best way to describe the growth habit of Cymbidium suave, it's like a vanda in the way of growth. It produces tall fans. Cymbidium suave flowers over, for us anyway, out in the Dandenong Ranges, around December, January is when they flower for us. Sort of thereabouts. That's the peak blooming season I've noticed. But they do vary in blooming season, in the blooming times, depending on what locality your plant's from. I've got the Bega subspecies of suave in the garden. It's from Bega in New South Wales. And so this one will throw up its spikes at the end of winter. So around August, September, I'll start seeing spikes. And then sort of October, November, I start seeing buds. Well, October. And then November, December, January, it will be in full bloom. But growing it is totally different to what I've got here. And in saying that, and in a lot of ways, I treat this Cymbidium a lot like my swan, where I treat this one where I barely repot it. I only just recently repotted it sort of November, December last year. This one has not been repotted for 15 years. And in saying that, this one and Suave, what they have in common is they resent the disturbance. Only repot when necessary, I found with them. But anyway, we're losing topic here. So Cymbidium Maybell. This orchid here is a limey, greenish yellow flower with a stark white lip, and it has very faint markings on the lip of the flower. This one flowers typically around September, October. August, September, October, thereabouts. This plant, every flowering season, produces minimum from 3 to 5 spikes each flowering season. This year, even though I've disturbed its root system quite dramatically, I've still gotten 3 spikes on it. On average, I get between 17 and 23 flowers per spike. The spikes are semi-arching to semi-pendulous. The flowers you would say are not miniature, they're not tiny, but they're not intermediate either. They're not your intermediate standard size flowers. They are about, you could say about yay wide in diameter. They're about.